You are listening to the Fertility Talk series hosted by Blessed Brokenness, a 501c3 bringing spiritual healing and financial blessings to those who suffer from infertility and child loss. Blessed Brokenness serves the community through in-person and virtual faith-based small groups and scholarships for fertility treatments and grief counseling. We hope you will subscribe to our channel and learn more about our ministry and how we are helping men and women find hope and healing through God's Word. Thank you for watching the Fertility Talk series hosted by Blessed Brokenness. I'm Mallory Ware, co-founder, and hosting with me today is Allison Moran, one of our leaders and board of directors. Today, we're going to talk on surrogacy, which is a part 2 of a series where we spoke last month with Kathy Stoner, who was the gestational carrier for her twin sister, Sarah, who we are excited that we get to speak with today about her journey of surrogacy and the financial and legal components that go with it. So we're excited that you're here with us today. Before we get started, I want to let you know that Allison Moran also has a journey of surrogacy and has one of her little miracle babies from that journey. And you can hear her full story on our Fertility Talk series titled Embrace Brokenness, Experience Trust. So Allison, let's get started. I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for having me.
Sarah, we're so glad to have you with us. I'm going to share a little bit about Sarah and then we'll get going. Sarah is a writer, co-host of Talk to Me Sister podcast, an abstract artist, an interior design consultant by trade. She has a bachelor's of science in interior architecture from the University of Tennessee. She's a design enthusiast and creativity is her outlet and her therapy. She's a cancer survivor and advocate. She is the co-chair alongside her sister and Dr. Hurley for ACS's Research Hers campaign in Tennessee. She also enjoys painting, her family, and supporting moms as they go through cancer and fertility struggles. Sarah and Kathy are twin sisters living in Nashville, Tennessee. Between having full-time jobs, juggling the mom life, and writing, they host a successful podcast called Talk to Me Sister. On air, they discuss important topics for today's women, including marriage, motherhood, health, nutrition, wellness, and more. Their mission is to encourage and empower women while giving their guests the platform to share their own stories of hope. They're advocates for cancer research and women's health. Sarah, I don't know when you sleep, but we are thankful for all that you do and all that you advocate for.
Thank you so much. It's so funny. I just left an ACS breakfast and somebody said that to me. They were like, I don't know when you sleep. You do so much. And I responded because I recently had this like aha moment where I was talking to one of my best friends and she was like, talking about just how full life is right now and how I feel like God is just like so good. And, you know, not even a year and a half ago, things were not great or 2 years ago. And I was like, it's not that it's, I need to rephrase it. And it's not like, oh, you're doing so much. It's, I get to do so much. And so when you're like me and you have gone through cancer treatment and spent an entire year and a half in bed, you're on the other side of it. And I guess I'm at the mentality of let's do it all because I get to do it all. So doesn't mean I'm not tired, but I'm loving life right now. So
that's so good. So good. Well, Sarah, kick us off by just sharing a little bit about your journey. As I mentioned, and as you know, we talked with your sister last month about her side of the journey that you guys had, but kind of talk a little bit about, you know, you went through cancer and kind of how that led into surrogacy and your journey in that.
Of course. So Kathy and I don't know how much she told you, but we were pregnant together. We have an older sister. All of us were pregnant at the same time. That was my first baby, Charlotte. She's almost 5. It's kind of wild. Samson is Kathy's son, and he's almost 5. So it was a really sweet time. Once we had them, we were kind of in like, it was Kathy's second and my first. So we were in the throes of new motherhood, figuring out life in our early 30s. We had just turned 30. And Charlotte was about 2 months from being 1 year old. So we had kind of struggled with some postpartum that first year, but just was really excited for the road ahead. And Richard and I, ironically, my husband, were in the season of already planning baby number 2. I had left my an old corporate career. I was just ready for some me time. Cancer was not on my radar at all. Kathy and I, cancer is it's a scary word in our family. Our birth father passed away of leukemia when we were 4. So when it creeped up in my life, it hit our family really hard. But when Charlotte was almost 1, I started having symptoms that I wasn't really sure were new symptoms or related to postpartum. I was not even a year out of postpartum. She was about 10 months old and I started bleeding. And as you know, women who have had babies before, your period takes a while for you to regulate. You're unsure. I mean, I was kind of one of those women who never really, I would have a weird symptom and I would chalk it up to like, oh, there's stress. Oh, I have an irregular period. And Kathy's in women's health. So when I told her I had a period that had lasted 32 days, I think now I'm like, of course I was anemic. Of course I was exhausted from that, but I was tired as a new mom. So I went to the doctor and Kathy said, I've had a couple miscarriages. Could you have miscarried? And I thought, well, that's crazy. I don't think so. I mean, I feel like I more, know my body more, but, Richard and I had talked about other children. I'm like, maybe. So couple months, fast forward, a couple months filled with just tests and unanswered questions. My OB was scratching their head because they took my blood work and it showed that I was 6 weeks pregnant. But they did an ultrasound and they realized, or they couldn't find a gestational sac. They couldn't find any sign of pregnancy at all. So I would come back for more blood work and my HCG hormone, which is the hormone that tests. I mean, everybody that's listening who've done IVF and done the blood work, they know HCG. Well, it kept rising, like my body was growing a baby. And so no one could figure it out. It was those 2 months were so grueling. I was in and out of the OB's office. No one could give me answers. And finally, they thought I had an ectopic pregnancy. So they called me into emergency surgery. And they said, there's a chance we might have to remove a fallopian tube, or we might have to give you a radical hysterectomy. So no, at this point, this was pre-diagnosis. I was 30 years old. My daughter had just celebrated her first birthday. I had spent the last 2 months in and out of the OB's office, had no idea what, I thought I had lost a child, then I didn't. And so emotionally I was exhausted. And Kathy, my twin sister, you guys heard from her last month. We are best friends. We tell each other everything. Of course, she rushed to the ER that night. I don't know how much she told you. I'm probably telling you too much detail. But she had told me when I met my surgeon that, was there on call in case I was going to have this hysterectomy, that she told me that night, well, if they do, I'll have your babies. It was like a matter of fact, confident, well, of course. And I thought that was the silliest thing I've ever heard. I was like, can you imagine? It was honestly like a comic relief in the moment because I was so fearful and so scared and so tired. Little did I know though, that comment kind of got buried because 1 week later, I was sitting in my oncologist's waiting room as a new patient. I was diagnosed with choriocarcinoma in 2018, and I had no idea what that was. I didn't know you could get cancer from a past pregnancy. A lot of times choriocarcinoma, one, it's very rare. You can get it from a molar pregnancy, a miscarriage, or a full-term birth. And so my situation was rare, but it was in my uterus. And I didn't really have time to talk about future fertility at that time. I started chemo the next week. And Kathy and I, we talked to a lot of women who are going through cancer. And we also partner with the Chick Mission. I don't know if you guys know who they are, but they're incredible. And they're advocates for women, giving them grants who are, thinking about fertility prior to cancer treatment. I did not, that wasn't even on my radar. Survival was on my radar. Like, I had Charlotte, she was 1 year old. I was grieving my circumstances, and also grieving so many things, but we rushed into treatment the next week, and I spent 7 months doing treatment. It was really hard. I was pronounced cancer-free 7 months later in December, and we rang the bell, and it was exciting, and there was nothing like that moment. But 1 year later, not 1 year later, sorry, 1 month later, my first checkup after Christmas break, I went into my oncologist's office, and she said, "I'm so sorry to tell you this, but your cancer is back. Your tumor is actually the same size it was before treatment. Nothing worked." And so I feel like that, when I tell this story, I'm like, that's really when I hit rock bottom. And I gave myself permission to feel weak and be sad. And I'm the personality that's like, okay, we're going to pull up our bootstraps and we're going to figure this out. Like, come hell or high water, like we're getting this done. We're fighting hard. And so that second time around, when my cancer came back and we had to come up with a new treatment plan coupled with surgery, which would include a hysterectomy, I just let myself feel broken. And I think that there was something like really healing in that. It was like the first time that it was almost like crying, and the brokenness and everything was like a shedding of sorts. Like, it was like a release where I could finally let all these other people care for me. And I felt like a little bit of weakness in that, because here I am, I don't know if anyone's listening that's a new mom diagnosed with cancer, but you feel like when you're a mom, you're the one who's supposed to like kiss the boo-boo and like be the glue of the family. And I wasn't able to do that. And that was humbling and horrifying at the same time. But there was something healing about, like you said, Allison, earlier before the recording, just giving up that control and surrendering and letting God fully take control so that I could rest. And honestly, the next 7 months is a complete blur to me. I had to start chemo all over again, and they wedged a hysterectomy right in the middle of chemotherapy. That's when my family really wrapped their arms around me. I mean, Kathy I had to do overnight stays in the hospital with overnight infusions, and she spent the night with me. My mom would pull my feet out of bed and make me walk, and it was tough. But it's like, God puts people in your life that, can be strong when you're weak. And he was the reason I could survive and endure all that I did. And we just believed that, when they said, we're going to have to do the hysterectomy, we know you're 30 years old, but this has to be done coupled with your treatment. Me and my husband, we had a moment. My family's really close, all of us. So when something happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. But my husband and I, we had to kind of get in our own bubble for a while as a couple, because it was happening to him just like it was happening to me. And I'm sure a lot of IVF couples and a lot of couples struggling with infertility feel this way. Or maybe they get to that point where they realize that I'm so glad that he was strong and he was able to communicate his emotions to me, because really we were, he was grieving it just like it was my body, but it was happening to him too. He'd wanted a son. I mean, our whole, picture perfect family that we thought was going to happen was just ripped out from under us. And we think, it's so funny, like when you think life is going to happen a certain way, you just have to hold on that God has something a lot bigger and better. And now I look back and I think of all we went through and all that I did even today, this morning, with speaking with women and everything. And I'm like, God, like that is so cool to finally be on the other side of things. But anyway, so I had the hysterectomy and I found myself in an eerily similar situation where Kathy was by my bedside saying the same thing. Well, do you remember what I said last year? She was like, I'll have your babies. And I'm like, she's like, we don't want to talk about it now because we got to get you well. That's our main thing. You're going to survive this. But sure enough, 1 year later, after I spent 2020, that was my year of healing. Everybody shut down and stayed home. I was already planning to do that. I was already home resting. But 1 year later, my oncologist gave us the green light and said, if you want to explore this with your fertility clinic, which it took me, I finally found a fertility clinic that I felt, knew me, knew my story, knew my oncologist, because that was the biggest thing. Kathy and I, when we were contemplating this on the side for her to be my surrogate, it's a weird thing to pray for, but we prayed for red lights and closed doors because we didn't want to do anything outside his will. And I wanted her to be safe. And I wanted, everything to, go smoothly. And I didn't want to force anything, I didn't want to force anything. So, long story short, finally found a fertility clinic that I felt knew my medical history and I felt comfortable with. Against all odds, my husband and I did egg retrieval. And it's funny, I love my fertility clinic, but the nurse, the week before I was supposed to do an ovidral trigger, she said, you know what, this is just a very expensive experiment. I'm not sure the outcome. And I knew in that moment that I knew what she was saying. Like I had to prepare myself either way, but I just wanted to take a huge leap of faith and felt so confident and was just giving it to God. Like if it was supposed to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not, God has a bigger plan, just like what you said, Allison, earlier. But my body had been through a lot. And I was very unsure. I actually had one ovary that was not even working. They told me they were going to try to get 20 eggs, or 15 to 20, I think is like a good number. For me, they got 5. And then they show you the odds. Well, if they get 5, it's 50% of that. And then if 50% of that, maybe half of that will go through testing. So the nurse was supposed to call me on a Friday. She called me a day early. So I saw her phone ring and I thought, well, this can't be good. But she said, I have to call you because you're not going to believe this. Out of your 5 eggs, 3 of them have passed PGT testing and they're perfect. And we were like over the moon. And that was the first step. And so that was like a cool God thing. We were like, okay, so I don't have a uterus. I can't do the other half of IVF. Kathy has mentioned that she wants to be my surrogate. She actually said to me, I will never forget it in the driveway, because I told her I was researching agencies. She said, I will be very, very upset if you do use anybody else but me. And so I was like, are you sure this is not just like you're taking me out for ice cream? Like this is And so, and I'm sure she gave her whole side of the surrogacy journey. And, it was like the sweetest, most precious time. We were very much, as sisters, like we did it all together, which was so sweet. Like sometimes we would say our baby and my husband, I'd be like, oh yeah, sorry, Richard, you want to come to this appointment? But we also were very on different journeys too. I think an intended moms journey is so different from the surrogate's journey. And I think along the way, we had moments where we had to give each other a ton of grace for feeling different emotions. And it's funny, I would watch us kind of like ebb and flow. And it was so cool how God did that. Like when I would kind of get low, she would bring me up, or vice versa. And it was like two hormonal women going through a pregnancy together. Allison, you probably can speak to this.
Yeah.
But like, regardless of, like I've hit women all the time asking me about surrogacy, and I'm like, it is the sweetest gift anybody could ever give to you. It's so incredible. Science is so cool. God is so cool. And I would never change in a million years that experience. And John Ryder was born in August of or this past August 18th, this past August, and he's 7 months, and he's perfect and beautiful. And he's like my miracle son, and I can't imagine life without him. It's just crazy. It's a really wild, I could talk to y'all forever, and you have a million other questions, but that's like the high level story.
Yes, it's beautiful, and it's the beauty and the brokenness, which we always say, there's so much beauty that comes from our brokenness if we allow ourselves to really surrender, like both you talked about and Allison talked about earlier in our conversation. It's when we get to that point where we allow God to really start to rebuild and rework. And I heard somebody say once, in the moment it feels so random and chaotic, and it's kind of like when you're weaving a piece of art or tapestry, and on the back side it's so messy, but you turn it around and there's so much beauty, and it makes so much sense on the other side. And
that's so true.
Yeah, that we just have to know that God has that bigger plan, and we just have to surrender and allow, I think there's so much, you're so right to allow yourself to be broken in that moment and grieve. And you mentioned grieving, you and your husband had to grieve even that, what those plans that you had for your family, what your family was going to look like. And I think so oftentimes the women that we talk with, even though they have a child already, just like you did, they almost feel guilty grieving that, because they're like, I should feel blessed because I already have one. But and we do, but you also have allow yourself to grieve something, even though you don't tangibly, physically have something in your arms to grieve. And there's 100%. so much almost like awareness that we're trying to bring around the grieving process, that it's okay, and it's necessary to grieve that. And you shouldn't be shameful that you're walking or that you feel that way. And the world and the culture tells us to get over it and move on, and we need to take the time to do that, and do that with our spouse too, because just like you mentioned, they're grieving it just like we are. It might not be the physical piece that they're experiencing, but it's the dreams, it's the plans that have been created, that you guys have shared and prayed for and planned for. So just want to kind of add that little piece to it. I'm so glad that you touched on it, because there's so many women out there that we speak to that experience that. And sometimes it is one of those things that stops them from joining our small groups, our community groups, is because they don't feel like they should be grieving, or they should be in this season of brokenness because they do have a child already, or they don't have a child that they've miscarried or anything like that. It's just more or less those plans that they've had for themselves. So I think
too, just like going off of that, I think it's okay. Like you might not be grieving like a tangible, like you said, but I think it's okay to say to yourself and as a couple, I'm grieving just in the whole scenario that this isn't easy for us. Like I'm just grieving that we're here. Like I'm just grieving that we have to. I talk to a lot of women who are considering surrogacy, And I think in like media and like celebrities use surrogates, it's like, oh, they get to use a surrogate. Like most of the intended moms that I talk to, they are calling me because that's their last option.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I get to use a surrogate. It's I have to use a surrogate.
Right.
And while on one token, it's such an incredible gift, but I think it's okay as a mom, as a woman to say, well, this is an incredible gift and you have to humble yourself to receive it, but you're not gonna, I mean, I had to grieve a little bit that I wasn't gonna feel John Ryder in my belly, or and you feel bad because you're like, God, like I can't believe I'm feeling this. Like that's so selfish. But it's like it's being a woman, it's being frustrated at what life throws at you. It's I think in those moments, like you have to just trust God that He has a bigger plan, and that like, when life, and I had to deal with this a lot with my cancer diagnosis, like when life turns out so differently than we expected, it's so hard to see when you're in the thick of it, like all the beauty that's around the corner. It's really hard. But there's hope in that when you hear other people's stories, to know that like the road ahead is so much more beautiful and hope is around the corner than what you just feel in that moment. And I think you have to hold on to that hope. And like you said, the tapestry analogy, like it is chaotic and it is crazy. And when I was thinking about like, how am I going to tackle a cancer diagnosis, or like, my life feels like it's in shambles, or even surrogacy. I have women call me all the time. They're like, I have to look for a surrogate. I don't know where to start. This feels overwhelming. Maybe I just shouldn't do this. It feels like it's a lot to tackle. But my advice always is like, you have to take it one day at a time. And God tells us that to do that exactly. Do
Yeah.
not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to take care of itself. And if we just rest in the fact that He has bigger plans and we're not like everybody else and we're special and we're cared for, you can only take it one day at a time. And that's how I did. I was blessed, 100% blessed, that my own sister offered to carry my baby. But it didn't mean that we didn't, go through all the same hoops. And look, we screened for her, and I actually looked at agencies and all that stuff, and we did all the, I mean, just because she was my sister, people ask me all the time, oh, because she was your sister, I guess you cut corners on that. I was like, oh no, legally we did all of it. And so it's funny now that I have John Ryder and he's 7 months. It's funny, you look back and you're like, I mean, it was fun. It was easy. Like I'm sure there was days it weren't, but I'm like, it's a sweet thing, where you turn it over and you see the beautiful tapestry. It's like God's way of being like, it seemed chaotic, but I go before you and I weave a path that is, He makes a way. And so I think that's important to remember, that he makes a way. We don't have to. So
Totally. I'm so glad, Sarah, that you brought up, the just that you and your sister were praying for red lights, because I feel like so many times in a fertility journey or dealing with a cancer diagnosis, you nailed it on the head when you said we don't want to do anything outside of His will. And so I think there comes with that this desire to want to genuinely follow Him and want His plan to be ours as well. But it's also, there's a lot of pressure with that too. And so I think with infertility and trying to navigate the what ifs and the questions and the next steps, or with a cancer diagnosis, my family is walking through that right now with my dad. And, it's so hard to be so overwhelmed by all that's ahead of you and the unknown future. But I love that you just talked about, it's as simple as taking the next step, doing what's right in front of you, having the grace for that very moment. My Bible study mentor yesterday just said, Allison, you're in a season right now that feels really hard and overwhelming. And the best thing for you to do is to live in 30-minute increments. And I thought that was so powerful, because we can get so overwhelmed by tomorrow and the next day and the future, you know? And so I appreciate you bringing that up, because so many times I'm like praying for open doors, but the closed doors are just as important as the open.
Absolutely. I love the 30-minute. I needed to hear that today. Yeah, my oncologist, when I was cancer free and you leave and that's it, and you come back for checkups. I remember thinking like, so this honestly feels even more daunting. It's like the 2-week wait, but like magnified. It's like, this feels so daunting. Like, I just go live. I mean, how do I even put one foot in front of the other, and how do I recover and all these things? And I think she said something that was really simple, but really powerful to me. At the time, she said, if you can't run, that's fine. You walk. And if you can't walk, you crawl.
Mhm.
And it was like, she gave me permission to heal on my own time and to let God give me the strength when I was ready. And I still like live by that today. Like, because I mean, infertility trauma, cancer trauma, tragedy, all of it, like it doesn't, you don't heal. Healing is not like a one-time event. And even like postpartum, how you were talking about how you started having feelings later and guilt, and oh my gosh, we all go through that. And so I think we have to give ourselves grace. And I love that 30-minute, living in that 30-minute zone. I think that's really powerful. So I love that you shared that.
For sure. Talk to us just a little bit about, like, what would you say to someone that you say you talk to people all of the time that are considering surrogacy and are overwhelmed by that. And I do the same. What would be the advice that you would say to that person who is overwhelmed by certainly how you alluded to the fact that media portrays surrogacy, but just that there's so much information. Like I say all of the time, we're so fortunate to live in the age that we live in, but we're also extremely unfortunate too. So what would be your advice either to someone that's considering surrogacy, or, and we talked to your sister Kathy about this too, but the flip side of that, to someone that's considering being a surrogate?
Yes. So I would say for the woman considering surrogacy, number one, I know the majority of what I hear is it's overwhelming, it's too expensive, I don't know where to start. So I would just encourage moms, number one, there's hope, and it's an incredibly sweet gift and experience. And I think finding, number one, I had someone do this for me, and because I didn't know where to start, I didn't know what I was Googling, and I didn't know what information was accurate. I found somebody locally, a friend of a friend, who had done surrogacy. And I know it's not, as popular now. I mean, it's getting more popular, surrogacy, but I found somebody that was a friend of a friend who I could call and sit down with, who could give me a breakdown of like step by step of what they did, how much everything cost. I know that seems like super logical and matter of fact, but it made it feel personal to talk to somebody that had done it. What did you spend on this? How long did it take from the time you did egg retrieval, the time you held your baby in your arms? What was the time span? I mean, just all the questions. I would suggest find a woman that could be an inspiration and a wealth of knowledge for you, because once I found somebody that was that for me, the process seemed less overwhelming and it seemed tangible. It seemed doable. I also would suggest finding a fertility clinic, doing your due diligence to really screen fertility clinics, interview them, find a doctor who understands your medical history, understand what has brought you to surrogacy. It's a long road to get there, I'm sure, for most women. And so really finding a fertility clinic is going to be a huge advocate for you and treat you like family and communicates really well, because there's a lot of moving parts. And so, and then also the financial piece, I think, is usually the biggest question. And something that's scary because, I mean, for me, I was coming off of so many medical bills with cancer treatments, but also I know women that are finally ready to screen for a surrogate have come probably from who knows how many rounds
Yeah.
of IVF, and it's,
Yeah.
it's like it's like, oh my gosh, we can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
And so for women listening, there's such incredible resources. Allison, I'm sure you talk about this for women considering surrogacy. Grants, there's actually I have a couple. You talk about this.
No, please share.
So let's see, the giftofparenthood.org. I talked to them. They give grants, funds for IVF, surrogacy, and adoption. If you are specifically have gone through cancer and are looking to preserve your fertility on the front
Mhm.
side, that's expensive as well, because that's like first part of IVF. So there's incredible organizations too that give grants for that, and that is fertilitywithinreach.org, and then the samfund.org.
Okay.
But also there's more grants that help with surrogacy. There's also more insurances now that cover surrogacy, which is great. And then medical, if a woman is obviously probably at this point familiar with IVF meds, and so I was pleased to know that there were savings cards. I mean, I think I saved just with my RX savings card through my fertility clinic. I think I saved like $2,000 on shots and meds. Kathy and I, we did a little bit of a strange route. She probably talked about this. She did the natural letrozole protocol where did she tell you all this?
Mm-mm.
Our fertility clinic was probably like, oh brother, these two, because we're always our own health advocates. Well, there's something called a natural cycle with IVF. And I was a little scared. I mean, I wasn't scared. My cancer diagnosis was not hormone driven,
Okay.
but still I didn't love taking estrogen for egg retrieval. So they put me on a very low dose. Which they do for a lot of women who have to do egg retrieval pre-treatment. But Kathy, who was doing transfer, she felt the same way in one sense. And, she had history of miscarriage, but she was adamant about doing the natural protocol, which means she just did suppositories after transfer. She did not do any shots, which is kind of wild. And you have to ask your doctor. So I don't want to say, it really just depends on the woman. But those shots can be expensive. IVF meds can be expensive, and there's options that will save you money there. And I think it's just about doing your own research, and like I said, connecting with somebody who's done it before. And now I have like lists of pages of like how to save money and people to reach out for. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had known this now that I know.
Right.
But
I know.
yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, that's super helpful. And it's super helpful that you were able to share those resources. And Mallory, maybe there's a way that we can get with Sarah when this talk is over and get those resources and share them, on our Instagram and our pages as well.
Love that. I love that. Well, Sarah, I know you spoke on to the financial side right there. And obviously everybody's, the route that they go can look different.
Right.
With how much it costs for all the things. Tell us some of the things that people may not be aware that they might have to pay for. Do you have some of those that that seem a little like, wait, what? I have to do that too? Or, just because I know there's some different things in there that aren't just what you would typically think you're paying out of pocket with surrogacy.
Yeah, so we paid out of pocket for everything. Unfortunately, I'd left my corporate career and we didn't have, that's a whole nother thing. We did not have great insurance when I was diagnosed with cancer. And we did not have great insurance even when we were doing IVF, unfortunately. But Kathy had way better insurance than me. And a lot of her insurance covered a lot of surrogacy, which saved me money on the back end. I didn't understand how it was all going to work out. But what we did that was the easiest way to do it. So she is your surrogate is the patient. So all of her ultrasounds, blood work, bills, everything runs through her insurance. So having a surrogate with great insurance is key.
Yeah.
We paid out of pocket for everything. I did not foresee. I have a breakdown of like, I have a spreadsheet that I sometimes send to women and say like, this is what we paid. We paid Kathy, not like, obviously she's my sister. She was like, do not pay me, but we did pay her a stipend monthly for just like, she's got 2 kids of her own, childcare, food, nanny, clothing, gas, like anything. I mean, we did that because we wanted to. But you cover all of her meds, you cover everything. I mean, you are paying, like, this is a gift, but also she's doing a job for your family. So you're paying for all of her expenses. I didn't even realize at the time, I knew nothing, that I was having to pay my lawyer for, like, you do an initial contract, and then when I believe it's about 20 weeks gestation, you do another contract, which is where you sign off, birth certificate rights. And I knew Kathy was not going to try to steal my child or anything. So, it's like legal parent stuff. And so we had to do a couple contracts with my lawyer, and everybody would have to do that. So I feel like I didn't really foresee that. I knew there was a legal contract, but I didn't know there was like 2 in the process and how expensive they were.
Right.
Let's see what else.
I think one thing that's shocking, and Sarah, I don't know if y'all did this, but again, I went through an agency, and our surrogate, which I was thankful for, received counseling all throughout her pregnancy.
Yep.
And so that's something that we paid for, that we were extremely willing to pay for. But I think that's important for people to know, that if you're considering surrogacy or being a surrogate, that the counseling support is huge. And
it's huge.
And I would really encourage going through an agency that's got all of that set up for these women.
That's huge. And so we, as a part of screening, we had to do counseling to make sure Kathy was like mentally fit. But we, and we do counseling, and she does counseling, and I do counseling. And regardless, I think it's such an emotional experience and such a sweet experience, but you're also going on such different journeys. I would always recommend just counseling, and it's always good to talk to somebody and tell somebody how you're feeling and how things are going. And Kathy and I got to a point where we're like, we're each other's, we rely on each other. We're each other's person, like our therapy, like we're that. And at some point we had to say, okay, it's healthy to also talk to other people as well. Like, this is a big experience. But I would say, yes, therapy, and I guess the initial screening of a surrogate, you have to do all the like psych tests and everything. So I didn't realize how much that cost. But I'm trying to think
it was like a full day as well. Like,
yeah.
The initial screening was a bigger process than she had initially thought.
Yeah.
One thing that I always try to tell people too is because the financial side of this can be so overwhelming, I think it's important for intended parents to know you are not paying all of this on the front end, or at least we didn't. Through an agency or whatever route you go, we had like a financial counselor, that advised us. And so it was like a trust account that we would gradually put money into, and it would be withdrawn from throughout the pregnancy. So it's not like you're paying this lump sum at the very beginning and then that's it. You're given a chance to pay as you go.
Absolutely. I think that was huge. I felt so much more at peace about just living in those like week by week moments or month by month moments, knowing like we had a spreadsheet, and we also had a financial advisor that just, we just crossed it off like you're going through the journey. And it was like those small bills were a lot easier to write than like one big check. And so that's probably like people ask us all the time. So I didn't go through an agency, so I had to do a lot on my own. And so I think the benefit of going through an agency, I'm sure it's so much more structured. And I think that would probably be really great for couples to have somebody overseeing that and having kind of like an extra liaison to make sure you're, okay, next step. And so that's kind of what my fertility clinic did for me. But once we got to the surrogacy OB part, it was just like we were kind of figuring it out. So we did it because we're organized, and I made a spreadsheet, but I bet that's a huge plus for going through an agency. I bet they're very hands-on with that.
Make sure nothing falls through the cracks, or
Right.
Yeah, you're not overpaying for something, just kind of keeps you a little bit more in line. Well, you talked in the beginning that you said you did look into some agencies until Kathy was like, don't be silly, that will hurt my feelings. What was how did you start that initial research on agencies? Like, what advice would you give for people that are looking at agencies? We get that question as far as, do we have preferred agencies, which we personally don't have those types of resources, but it's because we can always Google, but there's just so much information out there. It's kind of, how did you start vetting, or did you talk to someone that had gone through that?
So Google is overwhelming. I would say I'm always saying don't even go off Google, but it's just overwhelming. But like I said at the beginning, I connected with somebody in Nashville who had used Nashville Fertility and who had had a baby via surrogate. And I actually found her on social media, but then realized that she was in my brother-in-law's office.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that was a crazy moment, because I was like, okay, this is wild. She's from here, and she actually works with you. Can you go over to her desk and give her my number and say, you're the only person I know of in this city that is my age who's used to surrogate. So she was a godsend for me. She also put me into, when we initially, I was just asking her about cost and logistics. She put me in touch with somebody else, because somebody else did that for her. And that person had used a agency. And she gave me the name Await Agency, or Await Surrogacy. They're on Instagram. They're incredible. They were our plan B. They were awesome. She called me. I signed up online. I just wanted like general information. She called me my cell phone. This was like at 10 p.m. She called my cell phone at 10 p.m. and said, oh, hey, this is, blah, blah, blah. I just saw that you logged in on our site. Do you have questions about surrogacy? Turned out she has a huge heart for adoption. She had infertility struggles. She's had this adoption agency turned, she kind of turned her business from adoption to surrogacy, and that's her heart and her passion. She started this business with her best friend who also had done surrogacy. Anyway, it was like a personal story, and she's running this incredible business, and she had a lot of surrogates out of state, which seems to be popular. And that was just kind of, they do that all the time, but they were fantastic. They were my plan B. And so I would say just find somebody, even if you got to just get on social media, and then find a friend of a friend and a referral, and connect with good recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just, again, I mean, this is probably the case with anything, but like you alluded to, Sarah, like find a good fertility doctor that you believe in and that you trust, and ask him or her, like, who would you recommend? Because again, there are so many agencies, there are so many ways that you can go with this, but it can become overwhelming the more you get. So like, I would say, find somebody that's done it, find a doctor that you trust, and try to narrow down, the number of agencies that you get in touch with. The other thing that's great too is all of the agencies are willing to have consults with you. And so, ask the questions, schedule the opportunity, the appointment to meet with them and talk to them, and just do your research, because it, like you said, it's a whole lot more than, what'd you say, going to get ice cream together or something?
Yeah, it's involved. And honestly, what you said about the fertility clinic, like that is your first step. First and foremost, finding a good fertility clinic, finding a good doctor. Once I found that for me, everything felt so much easier. I thought to myself when I was just chatting with girls, oh, how am I going to find a lawyer? How am I going to find all that? And my fertility clinic, like you were saying, Allison, like they have such good recommendations. They gave me a sheet, a printout of their preferred lawyer, their like top preferred surrogacy agents that a lot of their past patients have used. Like they gave me a cheat sheet of like their preferred contacts, and I trusted them so much. Honestly, I think we used 90% of them. So they do a lot of the legwork, and surrogacy is becoming more and more popular and an option for women and a gift to women. So I relied heavily on my fertility clinic.
Same.
Yeah.
Good info. Well, great. I know this will answer a lot of questions for the women and the couples that are listening to this. So Sarah, again, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your heart and your insight into this journey. Is there anything else that any other last thoughts, or Allison, since you've also been through the surrogacy journey, that you'd like to leave with our community before we close out?
Well, I will say, if it seems overwhelming, just know it is worth every bit of the process. And everybody's road is different, so you can't compare other people's financial journeys, surrogacy journeys, IVF journeys. You have your own journey, and I will say it's worth every bit of the waiting, every bit of the process, every bit of the redirection. Oh my gosh, the redirection. We had to reroute. I don't even know how many times. But when we get off this call, I'm going to go downstairs and hold John Ryder, and it's worth it all. So I just want to give hope to people and couples listening, because it's not an easy road, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Yes. And just to take, like you said, that one day at a time, those
Yeah.
small decisions that will lead to hopefully a miracle baby for each of these families that are facing this option, and to know that there's a community out there that they can reach out to, whether it's Blessed Brokenness, they've got Talk to Me Sister podcast, where you guys really go in more in depth about your surrogacy journey and everything that you faced. So we hope that you guys will check that out as well. And then we will, I'm sure, do some more fertility talks on this topic also, because it does seem, like you say, more people are talking about it, feeling more comfortable about this option. So I don't see it going anywhere as far as conversation. And that's what we really want to do, is just keep the conversation going. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to the Blessed Brokenness community, thank you for listening. And same time every month, second Monday of the month, Fertility Talk will be available. So everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Fertility Talk series hosted by Blessed Brokenness. To join a small group or apply for a fertility scholarship, visit our website at blessedbrokenness.org. We hope you will join us for our next Fertility Talk, available every second Monday of the month.